All right, good morning, everyone. This is Steve Lee, Extension Weed Scientist of Alabama Cooperative Extension System at Auburn University. Appreciate for your time to watch this video of the 2020 Wiregrass Virtual Field Day Tour. Unfortunately, we are not able to meet you in person, but I would like to share you some of the things I have seen throughout the season and some of the recommendations for crop management for weed control. First, I would like to go over the season a little bit. We started in a dry spell back in May. Most of the row crop was planted in a fairly dry window. Some were able to get planted in April, but for some of those crops planted in the middle of that about 2 to 3 week drought period, I have received phone calls about using pre when there's no rain for the next 10 to 14 days. I seem to deal with that problem every year. I still tell growers, if you can spray something, that's better than nothing. And then a couple growers did that. One farmer has 2 fields. One has irrigation and one doesn't have irrigation. Those 2 fields are pretty close to each other, almost side by side. He sprayed behind the planter the same day, activated with irrigation, 1/2 inch irrigation, and he had great pigweed control. Versus on the dryland side, he still get decent weed control or pigweed control, but it definitely was not as good as the side that he sprayed and incorporated timely with the pivot. So I still say let's do that if you don't have a rainfall for the next 7 to 10 days, if you know there are high pressure or decent amount of pigweed in that field. But the management recommendation from me is your first post-emergent need to be very timely. Probably when cotton is in that first leaf stage, around 20 days after planting. So spray first post on time is very important in both cotton and peanut. So you can see from these of my weed control plots, I have these peanut planted on June the 3rd, and we spray our first post-emergence on June the 26th, only 23 days after planting. And we spray the second post-emergence roughly about 20 days after the first post-emergence. So timing is very important. As long as the spray timing is good, we can get fairly nice weed control even in a very high pressure field like this. All right, some of the growers use pre that is very heavy on pigweed. However, some of those pre herbicide or soil herbicide doesn't do a good job on grasses. That's why we start to see more grass issue later in the season, particularly in late May, early June when we get rain back. Lots of those fields didn't get sprayed timely. The consequence is growers are dealing with bigger grasses that they have to spray, and many of them spray Roundup and dicamba together in a tank mix, which sometimes give you that antagonism problem. We tackle this antagonism issue pretty hard this year, and I have to say we did have seen in a couple cases that we saw significant antagonism between glyphosate and dicamba. All right. However, later in the season, in the last 2 trials we spray in the last 2 to 3 weeks, we have not seen much of antagonism. So this somewhat correlates to my survey in the auxin training, because I asked growers how many of you have seen grass antagonism when dicamba Roundup spray together. Some of them raised their hand very quickly. Some of them hesitated a little bit. Some of them didn't know what I'm talking about. All right, so that somewhat makes sense based on what I saw in the field. It is a problem. I have seen it occur in my trials. However, it doesn't happen in every single trial we put in. So far, I put in 5 different trials, including the trial Dr. Russell put in Bell Minor. All right, we will have more information to show y'all about this antagonism issue. And also to clean up those leftover annual grasses, one treatment worked out fairly well for me and for some of the grower is Roundup Power Max. You got to use a full rate 32 ounce. If you use a generic, it needs to be at least 48 ounce because lower concentration glyphosate. So you need to use a full rate of glyphosate with Saline Max or Section 3 at a full rate. For Saline Max, that's usually about 16 ounce per acre. For Section 3, it's about 10 to 12 ounce per acre with ammonium sulfate crop oil. Because I have crop oil in the mix, I don't recommend crop oil broadcast over the top of cotton because of leaf burn issue, but with crop oil ammonium sulfate, several growers have indicated very good grass cleanup in late season. Although that's one situation we want a grower to avoid by all means. The best way to control grass is not let spraying Saline Max or Fusilade when your goosegrass or crowfoot are about this tall full of seed head. That's not going to do you much good. The best way to control them is to tackle them before they even come up by spraying Warrant, Dew Magnum, Zero Outlook. That's the best way to go. We have found dicamba-resistant pigweed in Alabama. It's not widespread yet. In the farther north, a couple counties along Tennessee line, we have confirmed 2-3 cases over there. It's reasonable to speculate those populations were carried by equipment from West Tennessee, where dicamba-resistant pigweed has been suspected for a couple years. All right, hopefully this problem doesn't get spread out widely. I don't have any latest update for dicamba registration or EPA updates. Hopefully, new label will come out before the election on XtendiMax, Ingenia, and Fesopan. I have told growers that be prepared in the new label. We may not have over-the-top application option anymore, which means you buy XtendiMax, you buy Ingenia, you can spray up to the day of planting. That's it. You can't do over-the-top application anymore. If you want to spray over-the-top, you still have Tavium as an option. Tavium had some supply issue early in the summer, so hopefully next year supply won't be a problem. I think Syngenta is expecting the demand for Tavium will skyrocket next summer. So hopefully that's the case. All right, 2,4-D damage caught. Look at too many of those this summer. If you see the chicken foot or devil finger symptoms showing up on your cotton, don't panic. The first thing you do is try to collect as much information as possible. I would suggest grower do a walk in the field of all the damage area to look at if you have a transition of real bad damage to real light damage. If you see that, particle drift is a big concern there. However, if the damage is very uniform across the whole field, almost like somebody spray on it, the first thing you should go to is your water source and preserve those empty jugs that you just sprayed in your last application. If the 2,4-D concentration in those chemicals as a source contamination is pretty high, you usually would see cotton showing this chicken foot leaf damage within 3 days. Sometime it could be overnight. All right, if the concentration is low, it may take up to 2 weeks for the damage or 2,4-D injury to fully show up on those injured cotton. So it depends on concentration. All right, so save those empty jugs until you know for sure it's not a source contamination because you bought a contaminated chemical. Cover crop trials in our research program yield the best weed control results as always. I have shown those last week and probably will keep showing that in future. And then last thing I'll say is we are still doing a resistant or weed resistant screening in the whole state. This year the main focus is annual grasses and the palmer or palmer pigweed. So far I have not heard complaints about dicamba doesn't work on palmer pigweed in South Alabama, nor have I heard PPO resistant or suspecting PPO resistant pigweed in South Alabama in the peanut growing region, which is great. But it's almost it's reasonable to expect that we are going to get the PPO resistance pigweed sometime in the future, which means Valor, Cobra, and Blazer won't work anymore. All right. So we are running lots of trials to prepare for that day, and we have seen good results in our trial without using any PPO herbicide to control pigweed at Wiregrass Research and Extension Center. We will share those information with the grower later this fall, early next spring, and those trials are funded by National Peanut Board and Alabama Peanut Producer Association. So I want to acknowledge those funding agencies along with Alabama Cotton Commission for providing funding for our weed science research. If you do have any question, please do not hesitate to call me or email me or text me. By all means, I'll be here to help with any question or issues that you have on your farm. Thank you.